This story is a work of fiction, created for entertainment purposes only. All characters, events, and situations are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to real people or real events is purely coincidental. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would ignore her own instincts. I spent 62 years building a life, raising kids, teaching students, making smart decisions. I traveled alone to Greece because I earned it. After decades of putting everyone else first, I wanted something just for me. Walking through ancient streets, breathing salt air, eating fresh olives at small cafes, freedom felt like the best gift I ever gave myself. But somewhere between kindness and survival, I made a choice that almost cost me everything. It started so simply I almost didn't notice. A helpful stranger, a friendly conversation, a man who seemed genuinely concerned about a woman my age traveling alone. He knew exactly what to say, exactly how to position himself, exactly when to offer help I didn't ask for. I smiled, because that's what women like me do. We were raised to be polite, to not create conflict, to appreciate when someone is nice to us. I ignored the tightness in my chest because I didn't want to seem paranoid or ungrateful. That instinct, that small voice whispering something was wrong, I pushed it down. I told myself I was being ridiculous. By the time I realized I wasn't being helped, I was being hunted. It was almost too late. I was far from crowded streets. My phone wasn't working right. And this man who seemed so respectful minutes ago now controlled every move I made. My age, my politeness, my loneliness, he saw all of it and used it against me. What happened next forced me to break every rule I was taught about being a good, kind, agreeable woman. Because survival doesn't care about manners. Before we continue, please comment below which city you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. My name is Susan Miller. I'm 62 years old, and up until 3 months ago, I was a literature professor at a small college in Northern California. I taught for 37 years. I graded papers every Sunday night, attended faculty meetings I didn't care about, and helped students who reminded me of my own kids navigate their confusion about life and books and everything in between. I was good at my job. I loved my job. But when I retired in May, I felt something I didn't expect. Relief mixed with terror. My marriage ended 8 years ago. My ex-husband remarried quickly. My daughter lives in Seattle with her own family. My son is in Boston doing something with finance I never fully understood. They call on holidays. They send photos of my grandchildren. But the truth is, I spent most of my life taking care of other people. And when that stopped, I didn't know who I was supposed to be anymore. The house felt too big. The silence felt heavy. I started walking to the grocery store just to hear human voices. That's when I decided to go to Greece. Not because I'm adventurous. I'm not. I'm careful, organized, someone who plans everything down to backup chargers and printed maps. But I read somewhere that women who travel alone after 60 often say it changed their lives. They talk about finding themselves, feeling free, reconnecting with who they were before marriage and motherhood. I wanted that. I needed that. So I booked a 2-week trip to Athens and the islands. I didn't tell my kids until the week before I left because I knew they'd worry, and I didn't want their fear to become my fear. The flight was long. I sat next to a younger woman who barely looked up from her phone. I ate the airplane food, watched 2 movies I can't remember, and tried to sleep but couldn't. When we landed in Athens, it was early morning. The air smelled different, warmer, saltier, older somehow. I took a taxi to my hotel in Plaka, a neighborhood the travel blog said was safe and charming. The driver didn't speak much English. I didn't speak Greek. But he got me there, and I tipped him well, because that's what you do. The hotel was small. 3 floors, narrow stairs, white walls with blue shutters. The kind of place that looks exactly like the photos online. The woman at the front desk was maybe 50, short dark hair, tired eyes. She checked me in and handed me a key attached to a heavy wooden tag. She said breakfast was from 7 to 10. She said to keep my valuables in the room safe. She said something else in English that wasn't perfect, something about being careful at night. but I didn't catch all of it. I smiled and nodded and took my suitcase upstairs. My room was on the second floor. Small bed, small bathroom, a window that looked out onto a narrow street. I unpacked slowly, hanging my dresses, lining up my shoes, plugging in my phone. I sat on the bed and felt the weight of being completely alone in a foreign country for the first time in my life. It scared me, but it also felt like proof I was still capable of something new. I showered and changed into a loose linen dress. I put on sunscreen and comfortable sandals. I grabbed my crossbody purse and a bottle of water. I looked at myself in the mirror. Gray hair pulled back, minimal makeup, reading glasses hanging from a chain around my neck. I looked like exactly what I was, a 62-year-old American woman traveling alone. I told myself that was fine. I told myself confidence mattered more than age. The streets of Plaka were beautiful in that postcard way. Narrow lanes, bougainvillea hanging over walls, cats sleeping in patches of sun. Tourists walked slowly, stopping to take photos, laughing in languages I didn't recognize. I bought a coffee from a small cafe. The man behind the counter spoke English well enough to take my order. I sat outside and watched people pass. I felt invisible in a way that was both freeing and lonely. I walked for hours. I saw the Acropolis from below, the Parthenon standing above the city like something out of a history book I used to teach. I didn't go up. I told myself I'd do that later. I wanted to ease into things, not rush. I stopped at a small shop and bought a ceramic bowl painted with olive branches. The woman wrapping it smiled at me and said something kind in Greek. I smiled back. That's what you do. You smile, you're polite, you show appreciation. By late afternoon, I was tired. My feet hurt. The heat pressed down heavier than I expected. I found a shaded bench near a small square and sat down. I drank water and watched children chase pigeons. An older couple sat nearby speaking German. A group of young backpackers laughed too loud. Everyone seemed to belong to someone. I felt the loneliness again, sharper this time. That's when I started thinking about my ex-husband. Not because I missed him. I didn't. But because being alone in a beautiful place reminded me how much of my life I spent making myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. He wasn't cruel. He just took up all the space. And I let him because that's what I thought marriage was. Compromise. Accommodation. Putting someone else's comfort before your own needs. I stood up and kept walking. I needed to stop thinking about the past. That's what this trip was supposed to fix. I turned down a side street that looked quieter, less crowded. The buildings were older here, paint peeling, shutters closed against the heat. I passed a small taverna with tables outside. A man sweeping the sidewalk nodded at me. I nodded back. Polite. Always polite. I realized I was a little lost. Not dangerously lost, just turned around. I pulled out my phone to check the map, but the screen was slow to load. I stood there squinting at it, trying to orient myself. That's when he appeared. He came from my left, walking casually, like he just happened to be passing by. He was maybe 40, maybe a bit older, hard to tell. Dark hair, trimmed beard, sunglasses pushed up on his head. He wore jeans and a white t-shirt. He looked local, but not touristy. He smiled at me in that easy way some people have. He said something in Greek first. I shook my head and said I didn't speak Greek. He switched to English immediately, almost no accent. He said I looked lost. I laughed a little, embarrassed, and said I was just trying to find my way back to Plaka. He said he was heading that direction anyway. He said he could walk with me if I wanted. He said the streets could be confusing. I hesitated. Not because I felt scared, because I felt awkward. I didn't want to impose. I didn't want to seem like a helpless old woman who couldn't navigate a city, but he was already standing next to me, already pointing down the street, already talking about the best route. And I thought, what's the harm? He's being nice. Greek people are known for being hospitable. I'm overthinking this. So I said yes. I said thank you. And we started walking together. He asked where I was from. I told him California. He said he'd always wanted to visit America. He asked if I was traveling alone. I said yes. He said that was brave. He said most women my age wouldn't do that. He said it with admiration, like it was a compliment. I felt a small rush of pride. See? I told myself. You're doing fine. He asked how long I was staying. I told him 2 weeks. He asked if I had plans. I said not really, just exploring. He said I should see the islands. He said Santorini was touristy but beautiful. He said Naxos was better, more authentic. He asked where I was staying. I told him the name of my hotel before I thought about whether I should. He nodded like he knew it. He said it was a good area. He said I was smart to stay in Plaka. He said some neighborhoods weren't safe for tourists, especially women alone. He said it in a way that sounded protective, not threatening. I thanked him for the information. I told myself he was just being helpful. We walked slowly. He matched my pace. He didn't rush me. He pointed out small details. A historic church, a family-owned bakery, a hidden courtyard. He talked easily, asked questions that seemed genuinely interested. He made me feel seen, not invisible, not like an old woman tourists walk past without noticing. Seen. And that felt good. I'm ashamed to admit how good it felt. We reached a small cafe with tables outside. He stopped and said we should sit for a minute. He said I looked tired. He said the heat could be dangerous for someone not used to it. I wasn't sure I wanted to sit. I was close enough to my hotel now that I could find my way back. But he was already pulling out a chair, already calling to someone inside in Greek. And I didn't want to seem rude after he'd been so helpful. So I sat down. He sat across from me. A waiter came out, a younger guy, maybe 20. They spoke quickly in Greek. The waiter looked at me and smiled. He brought water and 2 small cups of coffee I didn't order. My companion said it was Greek coffee, said I had to try it. He said it was part of the experience. I sipped it. It was strong, thick, bitter. I smiled and said it was good even though I didn't love it. He asked about my life. Why I was traveling alone. Why Greece? I found myself talking more than I meant to. I told him about retiring, about my kids being far away, about wanting to do something just for myself. He listened in a way that felt rare. He didn't interrupt. He didn't check his phone. He nodded at the right moments. He asked follow-up questions that showed he was actually paying attention. He said his name was Nikos. He said he worked in tourism, helping visitors find authentic experiences. He said most tourists only saw the surface of Greece. He said if I wanted, he could show me places locals actually went. He said it casually, like an offer between friends, not a sales pitch. I said maybe. I said I'd think about it. He smiled and said no pressure. But then he said something that made me pause. He said he could tell I was the kind of person who trusted people. He said that was rare these days. He said most tourists were suspicious of everyone. He said it was refreshing to meet someone open and kind. The way he said it felt like a compliment. But something about it stuck in my chest wrong. Like he was telling me who I was instead of asking. I finished my coffee and said I should get back to my hotel. He said of course. He stood up and pulled out my chair. He walked with me even though I didn't ask him to. We walked 2 more blocks. The streets were more familiar now. I could see the signs for Plaka. I felt relieved. I told him I could find my way from here. I thanked him for his help. He said it was nothing. Then he asked if I had WhatsApp. He said if I needed anything during my trip, recommendations, help, anything at all, I could message him. He said it so smoothly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I hesitated. I didn't usually give my contact information to strangers, but he'd been so kind. And what if I really did need help? I was alone in a foreign country. Having a local contact seemed smart. So I gave him my number. He typed it into his phone right there. He sent me a message immediately, so I'd have his number too. A little smiley face emoji. He said, now we were connected. He said to reach out any time. Then he said goodbye and walked away. I watched him go. I felt relieved and also strangely unsettled. I couldn't explain why. I went back to my hotel. The woman at the desk looked up when I came in. She asked if I had a good day. I said yes. She looked at me for an extra second, like she wanted to say something but didn't. I went up to my room. I kicked off my sandals and lay on the bed. My feet ached. My head felt heavy from the heat and the coffee and the conversation. I looked at my phone. Nikos had already sent another message. Just checking you made it back safe. I stared at it. It felt considerate. But also, how did he know I was back? I'd only been in my room for 5 minutes. I typed back a quick thanks and put my phone face down on the nightstand. I tried to sleep but couldn't. I kept replaying the afternoon. The way he appeared right when I was lost. The way he knew exactly what to say. The way he made me feel special and also slightly off balance. I told myself I was being paranoid. He was just a friendly local. Greek hospitality. That's all it was. The next morning, I woke up to 3 messages from Nikos. Good morning. Hope you slept well. Let me know if you want company for breakfast. I didn't answer right away. I showered and went downstairs. The breakfast room was small. A few other guests sat at tables eating yogurt and bread and fruit. I filled a plate and sat alone near the window. A woman around my age, maybe a bit younger, sat at the table next to mine. American accent. She was reading a guidebook. She looked up and smiled. She said good morning. I said good morning back. She asked if I was traveling alone. I said yes. She said she was too. She said it was her first time. She seemed nervous. We talked for a few minutes. She said she was from Ohio. Retired nurse. Her husband died 2 years ago. This trip was something she promised herself she'd do. I told her about California, about teaching, about wanting something new. She said she understood. Then she said something I didn't expect. She said a man tried to help her yesterday when she got lost. She said he was nice at first, but then wouldn't leave her alone. She said she had to go into a store and wait until he left. I felt my stomach tighten. I asked what he looked like. She described someone different. Older, gray hair. Not Nikos. But the way she described the situation felt familiar. The sudden helpfulness, the insistence, the difficulty getting away. She said she felt silly being suspicious. She said he was probably just being kind. But her instinct told her something was wrong. I wanted to tell her about Nikos, but I didn't. Because what would I say? That a man walked me back to my hotel and asked for my number? That didn't sound dangerous. It sounded like I was overreacting. So I just nodded and said it was good she trusted her instinct. She said she wished more women did. Then she went back to her guidebook. I went upstairs and checked my phone. 2 more messages from Nikos. You didn't answer. Everything okay? And then, I know a great place for lunch if you're free. I felt pressure I couldn't name. I didn't want to be rude, but I also didn't want to encourage more contact. I typed back that I had plans today. He responded immediately. Tomorrow then? I left it on red. I spent the day walking alone. I went up to the Acropolis. I stood in front of the Parthenon and tried to feel the history, the significance. But I kept checking my phone. Nikos sent 3 more messages throughout the day. Random things. A photo of a sunset. A recommendation for dinner. A question about whether I liked wine. Each message felt heavier than the last. That night, I was eating alone at a small restaurant near my hotel. I ordered moussaka and a glass of white wine. I was halfway through my meal when I saw him. Nikos. Walking past the restaurant. He glanced in and saw me. He smiled big, like running into me was the best surprise. He came inside. He said what a coincidence. He said he lived nearby. He said he ate here all the time. He asked if he could join me. I said I was almost finished. He sat down anyway. He ordered something in Greek without asking if I minded. The waiter brought him a beer. Nikos started talking like we were old friends, like I'd invited him. He asked why I didn't respond to his messages. He said it in a light way, joking, but his eyes weren't joking. I said I'd been busy. He said doing what? I said just exploring. He said alone. I said yes. He leaned back and looked at me in a way that made my skin feel wrong. He said that wasn't safe. He said I should have told him. He said he would have come with me. I didn't know what to say. I felt caught. I hadn't done anything wrong, but somehow I felt like I had. Like I owed him an explanation. Like ignoring his messages was rude. I finished my wine faster than I should have. I said I was tired. I asked for the check. He said he'd get it. I said no. He insisted. The waiter brought one check. Nikos paid before I could argue. Outside, he walked next to me. I didn't ask him to. He just did. He said he'd walk me back to my hotel. I said I was fine. He said he knew I was fine, but he wanted to. His tone was firm under the politeness. I walked faster. He kept up. When we reached my hotel, I said thank you and good night. He stepped closer. He said we should spend the day together tomorrow. He said he wanted to show me the real Athens. He said I'd regret it if I didn't let him. I said I'd think about it. He touched my arm, just lightly, just for a second. But it was enough to make everything in me scream. He said he'd pick me up at 10. He said wear comfortable shoes. Then he walked away before I could say no. I went inside. My hands were shaking. The woman at the desk looked at me. She said something in broken English. She said, "Be careful with local men." She said some of them look for women like me. Older, alone, trusting. She said it quickly, like she didn't want to be overheard. Then she looked back down at her computer. I went to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and tried to breathe. I told myself I was overreacting. He was just enthusiastic, just friendly. But my body didn't believe that. My body knew something my mind didn't want to accept. I looked at my phone. Another message. "See you tomorrow, Susan. Sleep well." He used my name. I never told him my last name. But somehow, he knew it. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to sounds from the street below. Voices, footsteps, a motorbike passing. Every noise made me tense. I kept thinking about how Nikos knew my full name. I tried to remember if I'd mentioned it. Maybe at the cafe. Maybe I said it without thinking. But I couldn't remember. And that scared me more than anything. At 3 a.m, I got up and checked the door lock. Then I checked it again. I moved a chair in front of it even though that seemed dramatic. I sat on the bed with my phone and searched for information about scams in Athens. I found articles about taxi drivers overcharging tourists, pickpockets in crowded areas, fake tour guides. Nothing about what was happening to me. Or maybe it was happening and I just didn't want to see it clearly. I thought about calling my daughter, but what would I say? A man was nice to me and now I'm scared? She'd tell me to come home. She'd say I shouldn't have gone alone in the first place. She'd make me feel foolish for thinking I could do this. So I didn't call. I tried to make a plan. I could leave the hotel early, before 10. I could spend the whole day away from Plaka. I could ignore his messages. I could block his number. But even as I thought these things, I felt guilty. What if I was wrong? What if he really was just being kind, and I was being a paranoid American woman who watched too much news? What if I embarrassed him by avoiding him after he'd been nothing but helpful? That's what women do. We talk ourselves out of our own fear because we don't want to be rude. Morning came. I got dressed. I put on jeans instead of a dress. sneakers instead of sandals. I pulled my hair into a tight ponytail. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. I looked scared. I looked small. I grabbed my purse and went downstairs. The breakfast room was empty except for an elderly couple speaking French. I poured coffee with shaking hands. I couldn't eat. My stomach felt like a closed fist. I checked my phone. It was 8:30. Nikos had sent a message at 7. "Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you today." The word beautiful made my skin crawl. I left the hotel at 9. I walked fast, head down, away from the direction Nikos had gone the night before. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to not be there when he arrived. I walked until I found a busier street with tourists and shops and cafes full of people. I went into a small museum I didn't care about and paid the entrance fee just to be inside somewhere public. I sat on a bench in front of ancient pottery I wasn't looking at. I checked my phone. It was 9:45, then 10, then 10:15. Messages started coming in. "I'm here. Where are you?" Then, "Susan?" Then, "Did something happen?" Then, "I'm worried. Are you okay?" Each message felt like a hand reaching for me. I turned my phone on silent and put it in my purse. I stayed in the museum for 2 hours. When I finally left, I walked to a different neighborhood entirely. I found a cafe full of what looked like locals, not tourists. I ordered food I didn't want and sat facing the door. I felt like an animal waiting for a predator to appear. My phone vibrated constantly in my purse. I didn't look at it. I knew what it would say. I knew he'd be angry now or pretending to be hurt. I knew he'd make me feel guilty for standing him up. That's how this worked. I taught literature for 37 years. I knew how stories about dangerous men went. I just never thought I'd be in one. At some point, I had to check my phone. I had to make sure my kids hadn't called. I pulled it out. 23 messages from Nikos. The first ones were concerned. The middle ones were confused. The last ones were different. "You're being very rude. I went out of my way to help you." And then, "I know you're still in Athens. We should talk." That last message made my chest tight. How did he know I was still here? Was he guessing? Or was he watching somehow? I looked around the cafe. No one was paying attention to me, but I felt exposed anyway. I paid my check and left. I walked without direction. I just needed to move. I passed shops and churches and squares I'd thought were beautiful 2 days ago. Now they just looked like places to hide or places to be trapped. I checked over my shoulder constantly. Every man in a white shirt made me freeze. Every time someone walked too close, I flinched. I found myself near the Plaka area again without meaning to. I needed to get back to my hotel at some point. I needed my things. But I didn't want to go alone. I stood on a corner trying to decide what to do. That's when I saw the woman from breakfast, the American from Ohio. She was coming out of a souvenir shop carrying a bag. I walked up to her without planning to. I said hello. She looked surprised but smiled. I asked if she had a minute to talk. She said of course. We sat on a bench. I didn't know how to start. So I just said it. I said a man had been following me. Not physically following, but messaging constantly, showing up where I was, not taking no for an answer. I said I was scared to go back to my hotel alone. She didn't question me. She didn't ask if I was sure. She just believed me. She said she'd walk with me. She said we could go together, get my things, and I could stay with her if I needed to. She said her hotel had availability. She said she'd had a bad feeling about men in this city from the start. She said trusting that feeling was the smartest thing either of us could do. We walked to my hotel together. I felt safer with her next to me. We went inside. The desk woman looked up. She saw both of us and seemed to understand something without me saying it. She asked if everything was okay. I said I wanted to check out. She asked if there was a problem. I said no, just changing plans. She looked at me like she knew I was lying but didn't push. I went upstairs to pack. My hands were still shaking. I threw clothes into my suitcase without folding them. I checked under the bed, in the bathroom, in the closet. I grabbed my charger and my passport and my book. I was almost finished when I heard voices downstairs. Greek voices. One of them was louder, insistent. I froze. I couldn't hear words clearly, but I knew. I knew it was him. He was here. He was asking for me. My heart slammed against my ribs. I grabbed my suitcase and opened the door carefully. I could hear him downstairs arguing with the desk woman. She was saying something firm in Greek. He was raising his voice. I went to the stairs. I could see the top of his head. He was standing at the desk. The woman from Ohio was down there too, standing off to the side. She saw me and mouthed go. I didn't think. I just moved. I went down the stairs as quietly as I could. He had his back to me. The desk woman saw me. She kept talking to him, keeping his attention. I reached the bottom. I was 3 feet from the door. The woman from Ohio moved toward him, pretending to ask a question, blocking his view. I walked fast. I pushed open the door. I heard him say my name. I heard him turn. But I was already outside. The woman from Ohio came right behind me. We didn't run. We walked fast, purposeful, blending into the street traffic. He came out of the hotel. I saw him from the corner of my eye. He called my name. Loud. People on the street looked. I kept walking. The woman from Ohio grabbed my arm and pulled me into a narrow side street. We turned another corner, then another. My suitcase wheels clattered on the cobblestones. My breath came in short gasps. We reached a busier avenue. She flagged a taxi. We got in. She gave an address in broken English. The driver nodded and pulled away. I looked out the back window. Nikos was standing on the sidewalk watching. His face wasn't kind anymore. It was cold, angry. Like I'd taken something from him. The woman from Ohio squeezed my hand. She said I was safe now. She said I did the right thing. I started crying, not loud, just tears running down my face while I stared out the window at a city I'd thought would set me free. Her hotel was smaller than mine, cleaner. The man at the desk didn't ask questions when she said I needed a room. He just gave me a key and said, breakfast started at 7. She walked me to my room. She said her room was right next door. She said to knock if I needed anything. She said not to feel bad about being scared. She said fear kept us alive. I locked myself in. I put my suitcase on the bed and sat next to it. I pulled out my phone. 31 messages now. The last one sent 5 minutes ago. Why did you run? I was just trying to help you. You made this weird. Not me. I blocked his number. I blocked it, and then I turned off my phone completely. I sat in the silence and felt my body finally start to understand it was safe. For now. I stayed in that room for the rest of the day. I didn't unpack. I just sat on the bed with my shoes still on, staring at the wall. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Footsteps, voices, a door closing. I kept expecting a knock, kept expecting to hear his voice on the other side saying my name. The woman from Ohio knocked around 6. She said her name was Linda. She asked if I wanted to get dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. She said I should eat anyway. She said we could order room service if I didn't want to go out. I said okay. She came in and sat in the chair by the window while I sat on the bed. We didn't talk much. She ordered us both chicken and rice and Greek salad. When it came, I ate because she was watching. The food tasted like nothing. She told me she understood. She said after her husband died, she was scared of everything for months. Scared to sleep alone. Scared to answer the door. Scared of her own shadow. She said fear was funny that way. It didn't care if the danger was real or gone. It just lived in your body until you learned to live with it. I asked how long that took. She said she'd let me know when it happened. That made me laugh. just a small sound. But it felt good. She smiled. She said she was leaving Athens in 2 days, going to Crete. She said I could come with her if I wanted. She said traveling together might be easier. I said I'd think about it. But really, I was thinking about going home, about giving up, about admitting I wasn't brave enough for this. After she left, I turned my phone back on. I had to. My daughter might call. My son might need something. I couldn't just disappear. The phone loaded slowly. Notifications flooded in, emails, a missed call from my daughter, and messages. Not from Nikos's number. That was blocked. But from a number I didn't recognize. The first message said, "This is Nikos. You blocked me." The second said, "That was childish." The third said, "I know where you're staying now. Different hotel, but I saw you get in the taxi. I know the area." The fourth said, "We need to talk face to face. Tomorrow." My hands went numb. I dropped the phone on the bed. He was still coming, still looking, still acting like he had some right to me. I picked up the phone again with shaking fingers. I blocked the new number. Then I opened the settings and looked for a way to block unknown numbers entirely. I couldn't find it. My brain wasn't working right. I went next door and knocked. Linda opened immediately. I showed her the messages. Her face changed. She said we needed to call someone, police, the hotel, someone. I said, what would I tell them? That a man sent me messages? That he walked me home and I gave him my number and now I felt unsafe? I said they'd think I was crazy. She said I wasn't crazy. She said this was stalking. I said I didn't know if it was. I said maybe I made it into something it wasn't. She looked at me hard. She said women do that. We gaslight ourselves. We make excuses for men who scare us because we've been taught that our fear is hysterical and their attention is flattering. She said the fact that I was scared meant something. She said my body knew before my brain did. She asked what I wanted to do. I said I wanted to leave Greece. She said okay. She said we'd get me to the airport tomorrow. She said she'd come with me, help me change my flight, make sure I got on the plane. I said I felt like a failure. She said I was a survivor. There was a difference. We went downstairs together. Linda talked to the man at the desk. She said there was someone bothering me. She said if a man came asking for me, for an American woman, he should say he'd never heard of me. The man looked concerned. He asked if we needed him to call the police. Linda looked at me. I shook my head. The man said he understood. He said he had a daughter. He said he'd make sure no one got information about guests. Back in my room, I searched for flights. The soonest one out was tomorrow at 2 p.m. I booked it. It cost twice what my original ticket cost. I didn't care. I just needed out. I sent my daughter a message saying I was coming home early. She called immediately. I didn't answer. I couldn't explain this over the phone. I texted back, "Everything's fine, just missing home. Tell you when I land." I tried to sleep but couldn't. I kept my light on. I kept my suitcase packed by the door. I played out scenarios in my head. What if he found this hotel? What if he waited outside? What if he followed me to the airport? I told myself I was being paranoid. Then I told myself paranoia was keeping me safe. At 4 a.m, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate. They stopped outside my door. I held my breath. My whole body locked. I waited for a knock, for my name, for the door handle to turn. The footsteps moved on. I heard a door open and close farther down the hall. Just another guest. Just someone coming back late. But my heart didn't slow down for an hour. Morning came. I showered and dressed in the same jeans and sneakers. I checked out at 7. Linda was already in the lobby waiting. She'd checked out too. She said she decided to leave Athens early as well. Said the city lost its charm. We both knew she was doing it for me, so I wouldn't be alone. I wanted to hug her, but I didn't. I just said thank you. We took a taxi to the airport. I watched out the back window the whole way. Every car behind us felt like a threat. Linda talked about Crete, about the beaches, about the food. She was trying to distract me. I let her. When we got to the airport, I felt my chest loosen just a little. Public space, security, crowds, cameras. Harder for him to reach me here. We went inside. Linda helped me find the right counter. The line was long. We stood together. I kept scanning faces, looking for him. Every tall man, every dark-haired man, every man in a white shirt. None of them were him. But I couldn't stop looking. I checked my bag. I got my boarding pass. Linda walked with me to security. She said she'd wait until I went through. She said she wouldn't leave until she saw me on the other side. I said she didn't have to. She said she wanted to. We stood there awkwardly. Two American women who barely knew each other but understood something most people didn't. How fast safe could turn to dangerous. How little it took. I hugged her. She hugged back. She said to trust myself more. She said to stop being so polite to men who made me uncomfortable. She said discomfort was information. I said I'd try. She said that was enough. I went through security. I took off my shoes, my belt, emptied my pockets. I walked through the scanner. It beeped. They pulled me aside and waved a wand over me. My heart hammered. I felt exposed, trapped. The security woman said I was fine. Metal underwire in my bra. I grabbed my things and rushed to put my shoes back on. I looked back. Linda was still there. She waved. I waved back. Then I walked toward my gate. I passed duty-free shops and coffee stands and families waiting for flights. I felt like I was walking through a dream. Nothing felt real. I found my gate and sat in a chair facing the entrance. I could see everyone coming. No one could come up behind me. I waited. My flight was in 4 hours. I didn't move. I didn't buy food or water or a magazine. I just sat and watched. People came and went. An announcement in Greek, then English. Boarding for a flight to Paris. Not mine. I waited. My phone buzzed. A new message from another unknown number. Susan, I know you're leaving. That's probably smart. But you should know I wasn't going to hurt you. I was just lonely too. You made me feel like a criminal for being kind. I hope you feel good about that. I stared at the message. The words tried to crawl into my brain and make me doubt myself. Make me feel guilty. Make me think I overreacted. I read it 3 times. Then I deleted it. I blocked the number. I turned off my phone and put it in the bottom of my purse. An hour passed. Then 2. I bought a bottle of water because my mouth was dry. I sipped it slowly. I watched a mother with 2 small children. They were tired and whiny. She looked exhausted. I wondered if she was going home too, if she was running from something, or just running. Boarding started. I waited until they called my section. I stood in line. I handed my boarding pass to the attendant. She smiled and said something pleasant in Greek-accented English. I walked down the jetway. I found my seat. Window. I put my purse under the seat in front of me. I buckled my seatbelt. I gripped the armrests. The plane filled. People shoved bags into overhead bins. A man sat next to me. Older, gray hair, reading glasses. He nodded politely. I nodded back. He opened a newspaper. I looked out the window at the tarmac. Workers loading luggage. Trucks driving past. Normal things. Safe things. The flight attendants did their safety demonstration. I didn't watch. I just stared out the window. The plane pulled back from the gate. It taxied slowly. I felt every second, every delay, like something could still go wrong, like he could still reach me somehow. We reached the runway. The engines got louder. The plane picked up speed. The nose lifted. The ground fell away. Athens got smaller below me. White buildings, blue sea, mountains in the distance. I watched until clouds covered everything. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. The man next to me asked if I was all right. I said yes. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. He went back to his newspaper. I wasn't all right, but I was safe. For the first time in days, I was safe. And that was enough. The flight was 11 hours. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My body was exhausted, but my brain wouldn't stop. I kept replaying everything. Every moment I should have said no. Every time I smiled when I wanted to run. Every choice I made that put me in danger because I didn't want to be rude. The man next to me slept most of the way. I was grateful. I didn't want to make conversation. I didn't want to explain why my hands were shaking or why I kept checking my phone even though it was on airplane mode. I ordered ginger ale when the flight attendant came by. I sipped it slowly and stared at the seat in front of me. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I started crying. Not loud, just quiet tears running down my face. I wiped them away quickly. The woman across the aisle glanced at me with concern. I looked away. I didn't need her kindness. I just needed to get home. We landed in San Francisco at 5 in the evening local time. I'd left a day early. My body didn't know what time it was. Everything felt wrong. I waited for everyone else to get off the plane first. I didn't want to be in the crowd. When the aisle cleared, I grabbed my purse and walked off slowly. Customs took forever. The officer looked at my passport, at me, back at my passport. He asked how long I was gone. I said a week. He asked if I had anything to declare. I said no. He stamped my passport and handed it back. I walked through to baggage claim. My daughter was waiting. I told her not to come, but she did anyway. She saw me and her face changed. She knew something was wrong. She hugged me tight. She asked what happened. I said I'd tell her later. She said she was taking me home. Not to my house. To hers. I didn't argue. We drove in silence for a while. She kept glancing at me. Finally, she asked if someone hurt me. I said no. Not physically. She asked what that meant. I said I didn't know how to explain it. She said to try. So I did. I told her about Nikos, about how helpful he seemed, how kind, how I gave him my number because it felt rude not to, how he started showing up, how the messages got more insistent, how I felt trapped, how I ran. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she pulled the car over. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. She said she was sorry. She said she should have told me not to be so nice to strangers. She said she should have warned me that men look for women like me, older, alone, raised to be polite. I said it wasn't her fault. She said it wasn't mine either. We sat there on the side of the road. She said she was glad I got out. She said some women don't. I knew what she meant. I'd seen the news stories. Women who disappeared on trips. Women who trusted the wrong person. Women whose politeness cost them everything. I got lucky. That's all it was. Luck. She drove me to her house. Her husband was there with my grandchildren. They ran to me yelling, "Grandma." I hugged them and tried to smile. My daughter told them I was tired from traveling. She took me to the guest room and said to rest. I lay down on the bed fully dressed and stared at the ceiling. I couldn't stop thinking about the messages, about his voice, about the way he looked at me when I ran, like I betrayed him, like I owed him something. I turned on my phone. Part of me expected more messages from new numbers, but there was nothing. Maybe he gave up. Maybe he found someone else. Maybe I was already forgotten. That thought should have made me feel better. It didn't. Over the next few days, I stayed at my daughter's house. I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to go back to my empty house where every sound would make me think someone was outside. My daughter let me stay without asking when I'd leave. Her kids were a good distraction. They talked about school and friends and video games. Normal things, safe things. At night, I had trouble sleeping. I'd lie awake listening to the house settle. Every creak, every sound. I kept my phone next to me. I kept the bedroom door locked even though I was safe here. My body didn't believe it yet. One morning, I was drinking coffee in my daughter's kitchen when she sat down across from me. She said I should talk to someone, a therapist, someone who specialized in trauma. I said I wasn't traumatized. She said the fact that I couldn't sleep and jumped at every sound suggested otherwise. I said I was fine. She didn't push. But she left a card on the counter with a name and number. I called a week later. The therapist was a woman in her 50s. Kind voice. She asked what happened. I told her the whole story. She listened. When I finished, she said something that made me cry. She said I did everything right. She said I listened to my instincts. She said I got out. She said most women in my situation blame themselves. Wonder if they overreacted. Wonder if they were rude. She said that conditioning almost gets us killed. She said women my age are especially vulnerable. We were raised in a time when being agreeable was survival, when saying no made you difficult, when protecting yourself made you a bitch. She said unlearning that takes time. She said I didn't have time in Greece. I had to act, and I did. She said I should be proud. I wasn't proud. I was angry. Angry that I had to run. Angry that being kind almost cost me everything. Angry that I still felt guilty for blocking his number, for not giving him a chance to explain, for assuming the worst. That's what he did to me. Made me doubt myself even after I escaped. The therapist said that was normal. She said men like Nikos are good at making women feel crazy, making them question their own fear. She said it's a tactic, a way to keep control even after they're gone. She said the best thing I could do was trust that my fear was real, that it mattered, that it saved my life. I went back to my own house after 3 weeks. My daughter didn't want me to, but I needed to. I couldn't hide forever. I walked through my front door, and everything looked the same. My books on the shelves, my coffee cup in the sink, my reading glasses on the side table. Like I never left. Like Greece never happened. But it did happen. And I was different now. I started doing things I never did before. I locked my doors even during the day. I didn't answer calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I stopped smiling at strangers just to be polite. I said no without explaining myself. I walked away from conversations that made me uncomfortable. I stopped caring if people thought I was rude. My friends asked about my trip. I said it was fine. They asked to see photos. I showed them pictures of the Acropolis, of cafes, of sunsets. I didn't tell them the rest. Most of them wouldn't understand. They'd ask what I expected, traveling alone at my age. They'd say I should have been more careful. They'd make it my fault. But Linda understood. We stayed in touch. She emailed me from Crete, said she was having a good time, said she thought about me often, said she hoped I was okay. I wrote back and told her the truth, that I wasn't okay yet, but I was trying. She said that was all any of us could do. 3 months later, I was at a coffee shop near my house. A man sat down at the table next to mine. He smiled. He asked if I was reading anything good. I looked at him. He seemed harmless, friendly, just making conversation. The old me would have smiled back, would have told him about my book, would have been polite. I closed my book. I stood up. I walked away without answering. He looked surprised, maybe hurt. I didn't care. I didn't owe him conversation. I didn't owe him anything. Outside, my hands were shaking. But I felt strong. I felt like I finally learned something my mother never taught me. That survival matters more than manners. That my safety is more important than a stranger's feelings. That no is a complete sentence. I went home and called my daughter. I told her what happened. She said she was proud of me. I said I was proud of me too. And I meant it. I'm 73 now. 11 years have passed since Greece. I'm telling you this story because I need you to understand something. What happened to me wasn't special. It wasn't rare. It happens every single day to women who were taught to be nice instead of safe. I never went back to Greece. I probably never will. That's not the country's fault. Greece is beautiful. The people are kind. But I can't separate the place from what happened there. Some things stain your memory that way. You can't wash them out. I did travel again, though. It took me 4 years, but I did it. I went to Ireland with Linda. We rented a car and drove the coast together. 2 older American women who understood each other without having to explain. We locked our doors at night. We didn't talk to men who seemed too helpful. We trusted our instincts before we trusted anyone else. And we had a good time. A safe time. People ask me sometimes if I regret going to Greece alone. They expect me to say yes, to say I learned my lesson, to say older women shouldn't travel solo. But that's not the lesson. The lesson is that the world is more dangerous for women who are polite than women who are careful. The lesson is that we've been trained wrong our whole lives. I think about Nikos sometimes. I wonder if he did the same thing to someone else. I wonder if she got away. I hope she did. But I know statistically some woman didn't. Some woman smiled when she should have run. Some woman gave her number because it seemed rude not to. Some woman got in a car or went to a second location or trusted just a little bit longer. And maybe she's still here. Maybe she's not. That's what people don't understand. I wasn't almost murdered. I wasn't assaulted. Nothing technically happened to me. But everything almost did. And that almost lives in my body now. In the way I lock doors. In the way I cross the street when a man walks too close behind me. In the way I don't smile anymore just to make someone comfortable. My daughter says I'm different now, harder, less warm. I told her I'm not harder. I'm just done pretending danger doesn't exist to make other people feel good. She said she understood. She said she's teaching my granddaughter the same thing. To say no loudly, to walk away without explanation, to choose safety over politeness every single time. That makes me hopeful. That the next generation won't make the same mistakes we did. That they'll understand earlier what took me 62 years to learn. If you're a woman watching this, especially an older woman, I need you to hear me. You don't owe strangers your time. You don't owe them conversation. You don't owe them the benefit of the doubt. You don't owe them a smile or a laugh or a polite excuse. You owe them nothing. If someone makes you uncomfortable, leave. Don't wait to be sure. Don't gather evidence. Don't worry about seeming paranoid or rude or difficult. Just leave. Your instincts are smarter than your manners. Your fear is more valuable than their feelings. And if you ignore these warnings, if you think it won't happen to you because you're careful or smart or experienced, understand this. I was careful. I was smart. I had 6 decades of life experience. And I still almost didn't get out. Because I was more afraid of being rude than I was of being hurt. Don't make that same mistake. I'm 73 years old. I survived. But survival isn't the same as living without fear. I still check over my shoulder. I still sleep with my phone next to my bed. I still feel my chest tighten when a stranger is too friendly. That's what he took from me. Not my life. Just my ability to move through the world without suspicion. But I'm still here. I'm still traveling. I'm still living. And I'm telling this story so maybe one woman hears it and makes a different choice than I did. Maybe she says no earlier. Maybe she walks away faster. Maybe she saves herself before she needs to run. That's all I want. For you to be safe. For you to trust yourself more than you trust a stranger's smile. For you to know that being kind doesn't mean being available. That being polite doesn't mean being vulnerable. Remember my story. Remember what I learned. And remember that no amount of manners is worth your safety. If this story helped you or made you think differently about traveling alone, please share it. Leave a comment telling other women what you learned. Subscribe to this channel for more real survival stories. And most importantly, stay safe out there. You're worth protecting.